Welcome back to Myths, Monsters, and Mullets. I am your host, John Methenkamp. If you have a paranormal encounter you'd like to share, you can email me at mythsandmullets@gmail.com. And when I say paranormal, I mean anything. UFOs, cryptids, ghosts, anything weird. I want to hear it. mythsandmullets@gmail.com. I'd like to thank everybody for all the support they've been giving me on all of the platforms. If you haven't yet, make sure you're hitting that subscribe button. Like, comment, share, tell a friend about the show. That's the only way we can grow. Make sure you're checking out all the descriptions in all my videos. If you look down below, you're going to find a list of all my favorite podcasts. Nevermore Hollows, Drunken Cryptids, Chumming with the Spirits, Lodge Tales, and so much more. Give them a follow. I think you'll like what you hear. On tonight's show, we have MAXIM FUREK. You've probably heard him on other podcasts and other shows. I heard him on Drunken Cryptids, and I thought, I got to get this guy on the show because I can do a much better job than Matthew. Just kidding, Matthew. Love you, brother. Go check out Drunken Cryptids. I give him crap all the time, but he is a really good friend of mine, and I know he can take it. But MAXIM comes on the show, and if you haven't heard him before, he is a rock journalist turned author, turned paranormal investigator. Really interesting guy. Also a psychologist. He's got so much going on. But this is a great episode. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
Out in the woods, shadows creep slow. Footprints deep where no man should go. Cold winds howl through hollers and brooks. Whispers of Bigfoot in the way it looks. Myths, monsters, and bullets in the night. Under a pale moon, strange glowing light. Truth out there like a blade it cuts. Myths, monsters, and bullets run amok.
Welcome back to Myths, Monsters, and Mullets. I am your host, John Methenkamp. On tonight's show, we have psychologist, author, journalist, MAXIM FUREK. MAXIM, how are you tonight?
Really good, John, and thank you for that wonderful intro. I feel special, but yeah, thanks. I'm looking forward to having our conversation and talking about the lost tribes of Bigfoot and Sasquatchery and all that. So thanks so much for the invite.
Oh, yeah, you're welcome. I originally heard you on Matthew Orton's show, Drunken Cryptids. I gotta shout him out. You know, he is one of my friends, so we try to help each other out as much as we can.
Yeah.
But hearing that interview, you know, I was really excited when I was able to make contact with you and get you on the show. I know you spent a lot of time on his show talking about coal region hoodoo, but I would like to first get into a little bit of your history. Mm-hmm. And then I would really like to hear about the Lost Tribes book. That one really interests me.
Yeah. I do want to back up, though, about Matthew and Drunken Cryptids. You know, those guys are from Arkansas. And I do podcasts with people all over, you know, as you would imagine. But the guys from Arkansas, they're different. They call you sir and good sir and kind sir. They're a different, I don't know where they're from. They may be from Uranus or Venus or someplace, but I mean, they are the gentleman's gentleman. They are so kind, and I'll tell you, they can't do enough for you. So, you know, Matt, you know, if you're listening, thank you so much for what you've done. And, you know, they're just great people. But yeah, I was on Drunken Cryptids. And we talked about the Lost Tribes of Bigfoot, and this book came out last year. It was published by Hanger One. And one thing that's interesting about the Lost Tribes is that it has a thing called IBT, and it's immersive book technology. And this is kind of new and it's kind of cool. But what it is there's a bunch of barcodes throughout the book. And if you take your phone's camera and hit that, that'll open up a video. And there's about 8 of them, but open up a video of me talking about that chapter. Now, we
Oh,
did
wow.
this here in my office space in northeastern Pennsylvania, and we took about 2 hours. And they asked me what chapters I liked the best, and those were the ones that we did the interviews on. But it was great, and it turned out pretty good. But a lot of people that have gotten the book they sort of rave about the IBT technology because it's different, and maybe that's the future. I mean, barcodes have been around for a while, but to place them into books, it adds another dimension, another dimensionality. And I'm just so glad that Lost Tribes is part of that technology. It's really kind of cool. So Hangar One did that. That was Doug and Alex Hychek. Great people.
Yeah. And also, this new generation that's coming up, that they're all about the technology. You don't see many kids nowadays with books in their hands, but if you can add that, that QR code, and they can still use their phone, that's a draw for the younger generation, I think.
We would hope, and we assuming that they still read, and so that's another thing too. I mean, our society, our whole country's been we've been dumbing it down for a while, and that's a scary thing. So, but that's a chat for another time. But I am. We had talked about this earlier, but I'm working on my next book is called The Paranormal Apocalypse. Is this how it ends? And there's a gray in guise of the Grim Reaper with the time, the sand dial there, the sand clock, and the skulls. And it pretty much talks about some of that, about the fear and what's happening with our society. And, so I'm working on that and hope to have that done this year in the summer of 2025. But, I go to a lot of book signings, and, unfortunately, there's a lot of people out there that don't read. And for your listeners out there, let me tell you this. I think that one of the best things I do is I turn off the TV, and I, not the podcast, but the TVs, and I
Don't turn off my podcast.
Not the podcast, yeah. But I like to read. I think reading is so good because you do your own visuals. You see your own stuff, and it's good. It's just a wonderful thing. It's good for the head. It's meditative. So if you're not reading, please consider reading the newspaper or a comic book or something. Just get it started because it's a good thing. It's a good thing.
Yeah, I had a high school English teacher that, you would think it was English lit, and he didn't care what you were reading as long as you were reading something. So if you brought in a comic book, you got credit for that as long as you could do a report on it.
Yeah, yeah.
It didn't count as much as a novel, but it still counted. Reading is reading, and it is very important.
And when you say that a lot of the old stuff is just boring, none of it's boring. I mean, the Bible's filled with sex and violence and blood and the apocalypse. And Chaucer is filled with farting and defecation. And God, you name it. I mean, Chaucer was down and dirty, So, and Shakespeare, I mean, every single way you could view humankind, with jealousy and love and, all and murder. And I mean, it's there, it's there. So my one goal is I got to read Moby Dick, and that's in very old English. It's really tough to read, and it's a big book, but I'm thinking I got to do that. Just read it one time in my life, so that's on the list, the bucket list.
Yeah, I did read that in high school, and you're right. It's not in the type of language we would speak today.
Yeah. Like even in the old days, they like in horror movies, they talked about he fixed on her. What the hell does that mean? Well, he just stared at her. He fixed on her. But some of the language is kind of neat. It's just So
I would like to hear some of the insults that you read in some of these books come back, because they like just make you laugh just saying them.
Yeah.
When you read some of those older texts,
yeah.
You're like, what is this word? And then you find out, oh no, they were putting somebody down with that.
Things haven't changed. I mean, there's nothing new under the sun. 2,000 years ago, John, there were guys like me and you having similar conversations. talk, and what does change? I mean, nothing changes. Maybe fashion, maybe politics, technology, but humankind is the same. We don't change, our emotions, our loves or hates, whatever, so, that's all the same. And, just hopefully that as we get older and, mature, that we're kinder and gentler and more altruistic and have more compassion. I think that's the key. Music and compassion, I think, are two of the most important things, at least in my life.
Yeah. So you started out as a music journalist, correct?
Yeah, that was my passion, rock and roll. I mean, just love rock and roll, and wrote about it. And I didn't go to Berkeley or go to any of these schools, but so how do you write about that backbeat and the bass and these things, like when they add a pattern, all that stuff? I mean, I didn't know the terminology, but I would write about it anyway. And, it's just, just a wonderful, wondrous thing to listen to music and then to write about it. And I'll tell you what, last Tuesday we went to see Alice Cooper, and I've seen Rob Zombie and I've seen who's the other one, Marilyn Manson together. Alice Cooper is better than the two of them together. Alice Cooper is theatrical rock. I mean, a lot of people get killed, a lot of blood, a lot of that stuff. But man, is it good. I mean, they're tight. They got great guitarists. They got a female shredder, and he's good. He's like, I don't know, 77, 78, 79, I don't know. But Alice Cooper is good. He's on his game. He's one of the best. If you get a chance to see Alice Cooper, whose father is a minister or was a minister, go see him, because it's really good. And that's just theatrical. It's fun. And you know what? The other thing too is that these people that say, well, we got to censor violence and all this stuff. Well, that was a violent thing. People, his head got cut off and he killed people, and Michael Myers was there and all this other stuff. I didn't go home feeling rage and anger and feeling a need to go and kill anybody. I mean, it was just a show. It was a great show, and I had great seats. And, we went out for a nice meal before, and my wife doesn't like that stuff. So I went with my buddy, my wingman, John. But we had a great time, and that was good. I love concerts. And, so that's what I used to do. I used to write about rock and roll, and that got me into the paranormal. It was just like a real fluke, a quirk, not a coincidence, but some kind of destiny or fate brought me into the paranormal.
Let's touch on that a little bit. I know we had said we didn't want to go into that. Oh no, that was the coal region hoodoo.
Yeah.
But let's go into that book a little bit, because we were talking before how you got started into the paranormal, and that story really is fascinating.
Yeah. So back home, every area of the country has their own rock bands that maybe had a top 10 or top 40 hit. Ours was a song called Timothy. It was by a group called the Boys, Buoys. And Timothy was about cannibalism in a mine shaft. Now, where I live in northeastern Pennsylvania, there was a lot of anthracite coal. And, we claim that we fueled the industrial revolution. It was with the anthracite coal. And it was back-breaking work. Those guys that came over were basically indentured servants. I mean, they worked really hard. So anyway, the song Timothy was about cannibalism in a mine shaft. So I was writing a rock biography about the song Timothy and its connection to Shepton. And Shepton, and that was the book that launched it all for me. Shepton was a true story that took place in 1963. And there were 3 guys that were entombed for 2 weeks. Only 2 came out. So there were allegations of cannibalism. There was they also said that Pope John the 23rd was with them in that mine, that pit, for 2 weeks. Pope John the 23rd died in June of 63. Shepton took place in August. It was a matter of life after death. In all 3 of the purported miracles, I mean, call them what you will, possible miracles, purported miracles, alleged miracles, whatever. All 3 of those, if you're of the Catholic faith, you believe in that, and you believe in miracles and apparitions. But all 3 of those miracles of Pope John the 23rd happened after he died. And I spoke with priests and nuns and brothers, and the story was the same. The Pope died, went to heaven, got his power, and came down. And the miracles weren't created by Pope John the 23rd. They were created by God working through him. All things through God. So cannibalism in Shepton, the miracle of Pope John the 23rd, that was out-of-body experiences, near-death experiences, after-life experiences, humanoid creatures. They saw golden cities in pitch darkness. It was one of the stories of human survival. One of the top stories of 1963, surpassed only by what? And John, here's a 10-point question for you.
I'm going to say,
what was the story in 1963 that kicked Shepton off the front page?
63.
So Shepton was August of 63.
I'm drawing a blank here.
Yeah, and I'm being an idiot.
Kennedy?
It was the assassination of John Kennedy.
It took me a second.
It was the assassination of John Kennedy in November. And that became the big thing. So in the Lost Tribes of Bigfoot, I talk a lot about the Patterson-Gimlin film, which is the holy grail of Sasquatchery. 1967, probably the only or the most authentic piece of evidence we have. And that has been scrutinized and validated so many times, but it's sort of like the Zapruder film of the Kennedy assassination, that both the Patterson-Gimlin film and the Zapruder film have been looked at and fast forward and slowed down and digitized and everything else. I mean, both of those are probably the two most infamous pieces of film, out certainly in American in our history. So, but yeah, that was pretty amazing. So Shepton was the one that came out in 2016. And then here's the thing. So I just wrote the book. It was going to be a rock biography, but it had a lot of paranormal things in it. All of a sudden, the door started to open. I got invited to podcast, and there were podcasts back in 2016. I got invited to expos, and the Australian Mysterious Universe did a 90-minute piece on Maxim, FUREK, and the Shepton mythology, and just on and on. It just got bigger and bigger. And I want to say this about, me landing in the realm of the paranormal. People that I've met, such as yourself, have been so helpful and so gracious and so hospitable. I mean, it's been a wonderful, wonderful transition, and I can't say enough about it. I mean, paranormal folks are pretty neat people. I mean, they're very tribal. It's like our tribe, and it's great to be here to talk about the paranormal, because I love nothing better. Just like you, just trying to understand what it is. That's all we're trying to do.
Yeah, that's what got me into this was, I had my own paranormal encounters, and I just wanted to find out more.
Yeah.
And the easiest way to do that is by asking people who have had similar encounters or have had, have knowledge in this, So that's why I do this show. Not so much that, I do enjoy meeting people like yourself, but it's more for that knowledge, I have to know what is it that I've seen and heard and experienced.
Yeah.
Because at the moment that any of this stuff happens, it's mind blowing, you know,
and
it's not supposed to exist.
Yeah. And I think everybody has a piece of it. Everybody has a little sliver of that answer, whatever that is, or has a part of that tapestry, if that's what it is. So, I've spoken with people that, have seen Bigfoot. They claim to have seen Bigfoot, and they tell me their stories. And, again, I just listen, because there's no way of me proving or disproving it. So I just listen to what they have to say. And, but pretty amazing out there. And I've spoken with people that I have high regard of, who have had sightings or know of people who have had sightings. So there's something going on here. And we know this because thousands of people are seeing similar things. There's a lot of commonality. Now, the one thing I want to talk about is, when you talk about, you interview all these people, and in this day and age of the computers and Google, any one of us could go out there and Google Bigfoot and figure out what it is and describe it and all this. In my book, I have a chapter on Albert Ostman. Took place in 1924. And Albert Ostman was a Swedish-Canadian trapper up in British Columbia. And something was messing around with his campsite, stealing food, mucking it up, leaving tracks. So Ostman had a plan. He hid inside his sleeping bag with a rifle, and he was going to jump out and shoot the culprit. So what happens was he fell asleep, and he felt himself being hoisted up, and somebody was carrying him. So it seemed like miles and miles, but they dumped him there gently into a valley. And here it was a family of Sasquatch. What you would say, a mother, father, son, and daughter. Now the daughter, they were all very curious of Albert Ostman, but the daughter was feeding him sweet grass, and everything was okay. They were taking care of him. They weren't malicious. They weren't threatening him. But at some point he got it in his head that he felt that they were going to use him for sex, that they were going to use him to procreate. And that's when Ostman had to put together a plan. So the plan was this. He had chewing tobacco. So he was able to entice the elderly Sasquatch to try some of this, which he did. He got sick. He got nauseous. And that's when Ostman hightailed it out of there. He went back to his place in British Columbia, and he didn't say anything. Now, this was back in 1924. There started to be articles in the local British Columbian papers about this thing called Sasquatch. And, Sasquatch was around that area for thousands of years. And we know this through the coastal peoples that had totem poles and had stories, oral stories, the oral tradition where they would talk about Sasquatch. Ostman said, wait a second, I can relate to all this stuff. So what he did was he contacted John Green. Now, John Green was a British Columbia journalist, and John was one of the original four horsemen of Sasquatchery. He was one of the pioneers. He did the hard work and the heavy lifting before the day and age of computers. He believed that Albert Ostman's story was true. Again, this was before Ostman was able to even get any information about how they looked, how they acted, especially in a group. The one thing that Ostman said that was of interest, he did not talk about that smell, that fecal matter, wet dog, rotten egg smell that everybody talks about when they see a Bigfoot. He didn't talk about that. So it's just possible that scent is used as a weapon. Or maybe somebody else says, I've heard that as Sasquatch zigs and zags in between dimensions, if it's an interdimensional being, that part of that stench is from that other dimension that we get a whiff of. So anyway, Albert Ostman is probably, has to be listed. His narrative, his story has to be listed along with the Patterson-Gimlin film as being things, bits of information that validate the existence of Bigfoot. So again, we don't have a body and we don't have DNA, and we cannot appease or satisfy the scientific community. However, we have something. And when I look at this, I say, wait, this is part of J. Allen Hynek's Elements of High Strangeness. There's enough stuff there to say this makes sense. This is valid. Again, not a carcass, not a bunch of DNA, but enough to give us cause to take another look at it and say there's something here.
Yeah, there's enough witnesses. It only takes 3 witnesses to convict somebody of murder, but we have thousands and thousands of witnesses to this creature, but that's not good enough.
Yeah. And sometimes you don't even have to have one witness, to get somebody, you don't need a body even to prove that somebody did something. So anyway.
Right. Right. So why can't we apply that to Bigfoot? I don't understand it.
Yeah. Well, the reason we can is because we don't have a whole lot of forward thinkers who are thinking like that and making that recommendation. I think we need to do something like that. I think we really need to step it up. I think we need to go and, do our due diligence. We need to use the scientific method. We need to be stewards of the environment. We got to do all that stuff, so that we come across as honorable citizen scientists rather than, kooks, who are, zealots who are just looking for this creature that the scientists don't believe exists. So, I think we have to do more, and maybe we are doing more. I know in ufology, in the UFO community, I believe that certain members of MUFON are the ones that were behind the recent UFO congressional hearings. I believe that they were working behind scenes and not taking credit to have these congressmen do these interviews with David Grush and with Luis Elizondo to find out what's out there. So I think that, I know some people in MUFON, and although they won't talk about it publicly, and although they won't talk about the paranormal connection with flying saucers, that's not part of their agenda. A lot of them, maybe most of them, maybe even all of them, believe that there's a paranormal aspect to flying saucers. And I use the term flying saucers and UFOs. That's just earthy to me. It's better than UAPs. So
right. I don't understand why they changed it. I know it makes sense to them, unidentified aerial phenomenon.
Yep.
But I think it's because not all the time people are describing actual craft.
Yeah.
So I get it, but it was UFOs for so long. Let's not change it.
Yeah, I don't think yeah. And a lot of people talk about, not so much about saucers, but they talk about the orbs. Orbs are big. I have a lady that contacts me. She's being followed by the orbs, and she gives me this story, and they've been following her for years, and I don't know, but it's not just her, but a lot of people, talk about those orbs. So I don't know what that is, but people are seeing them.
Right. But you said that you actually had a UFO encounter or seen UFOs, correct?
Yeah, and on numerous occasions, and this is true and valid, and I'll take this to the grave. But I was a radarman aboard the USS Constellation. It was CVA-64, an attack carrier. I was in Vietnam, and we would look on the radar scope, and we would see things called bogies. Now, some of these bogies, they were unidentified. They were faster and more maneuverable than any guided missile we had or the Soviets had. And we would put them down in the logbook as UFOs, and then we would have the range and bearing. We were told, and most of us aboard the ship were under the age of 20. We were just little babies, fighting this war. We were told to keep our mouths shut. Don't tell anybody about what you saw. And then those logbooks would disappear, and the next day there would be more logbooks. And I know when they were still there, I would look through the logbooks and see all these UFO sightings. There were lots of them. I've talked to my Navy buddies, the ones that are still around, and we exchange information. And yes, they saw them too. Other people saw bogies. People in other branches of the military. But in 2004, aboard the USS Nimitz, they saw this Tic Tac video. There was a Tic Tac video off the coast of San Diego, and it went back and forth. The G-force was tremendous, and they didn't think that any human could withstand that terrific, twists and turns. And then what happened was, we were talking about UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomenon, the Pentagon's, nomenclature. This thing hovered, and then it went under the water. So they started to use the term unidentified anomalous phenomenon to take in all this stuff. So we know that there's been a lot of, sightings of these craft that go under the water. But the Patterson-Gimlin film of 1967, the U.S. Navy video of 2004, to me are the most authentic things we have in Sasquatchery and in ufology. I don't think that there's anything more, anything better that we've seen and that we've been able to talk about and scrutinize. And that's the thing. It has to be something that's not under the radar, but it's something that you and I will discuss and talk about. And those two things are, so that's what I call the Holy Grail.
Yeah, I completely agree, especially with the Patterson Gimlin film. I would throw the Ape Canyon encounter in
Okay.
there.
Yep. Okay. Yeah. Yep.
As far as, the most plausible and believable accounts, I mean, you had so many people reporting the same thing. And, when they went back out to the cabin, there's these holes in the walls that, no man's going to do that,
Yeah. Yeah.
So I put that in there too.
And what's unique about Ape Canyon is that these Bigfoot creatures, these cryptids, were aggressive and threatening when typically with Bigfoot sightings, they're not. They're reclusive. They run away. The only example I've ever heard, other than Ape Canyon, of a person being, attacked or actually in this case killed, was Teddy Roosevelt. And he wrote a book, and I think it took place in Montana. And he talked about somebody who was killed by this creature. And it wasn't a bear, but some creature. So President Teddy Roosevelt was the one who did that. But in most of the sightings, Bigfoot runs away. It's it's curious, but it runs away. They seem to glide rather than walk. They seem to emit light from their eyes rather than reflect light. They have a thing called what Rosemary Ellen Guiley called rapid transport or bilocation, where they can you see them ahead of you and then they're behind you, or they shape shift from the material and tangible to the intangible. And this is exactly what the natives of British Columbia said, that Sasquatch could go and assume different forms, and that it was a blessing to see a Sasquatch, that Sasquatch was the protector of the environment, and just a lot of things that, are good things. I mean, it's almost like, and I have a chapter in my book, The Lost Tribes of Bigfoot, that sort of ruffled the feathers of some people, but I called the chapter, Is Bigfoot Our New Religion? And I took a look at, the lack of people going to church. And I talked about people going into the woods and how that is sort of like a spiritual experience, with the sacrifice, the sacrament, the shared values, the higher power being Bigfoot and all that. And I mean, again, nothing to make fun or to belittle Christianity or Buddhism or Hindu or Islam, the main four. None of that. It's just that, it's if you want to believe in Bigfoot, you want Bigfoot to be your higher power, that's between you and your higher power. Nobody else has a need to know what your connection is to your higher power or your Lord. That is a sacred, personal, intimate thing. Nobody needs to know. And, and I don't like well, whatever. I mean, I don't want to get into this thing because that's how you get shot. The one thing that really gets people, up in arms is when you talk about religion. So, so I'm not being negative or critical. I'm just saying that's just the way it is.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think if I remember the statistics with my group, the baby boomers. Something like 64% of us went to church and believed in organized religion. And now with millennials and Generation Z, these are the kids that I think the oldest one is 26. Something like 24 of them, go to church and believed in organized religion. Now, it's not us, baby boomers versus them, because there's a whole lot of other generations that came in between, and a lot of reasons why people aren't doing that, because, they may find other ways to worship. They may, do that with their family, with family outings or whatever. So, but things have changed. And definitely with all the religions, there's very few that are showing an uptick in membership.
Yeah. I do have a a friend that's also a podcaster. I actually went to school with him. He actually is a pastor at the church in the town that I grew up in. And there are some promising signs in actually this Gen A, like this newest generation.
Oh, Generation Z. Okay.
Well, actually, the ones that are still in school right now,
Okay.
showing interest, and Gen Z too, because he's talking about the 20-somethings.
Okay.
That there is starting to be a little more interest in questioning, the dogma that my generation and millennials, well, religion doesn't exist, and you're stupid if you believe it.
No. Yes.
I think this is kind of the new rebellion.
Yeah.
Because they're going against what their parents, all that religion doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
So now you get this rebellion the other way,
mm-hmm.
and it might actually work out.
Well, that's good. Yeah. I mean, it's a good, religion gives us hope and promise, gives us hope and promise that there's going to be a better day. It helps us get through the trying times. And that's, and that's a good thing. And, I mean, faith, people that have, listen, I was a psychologist, and there was a guy named Albert Ellis. Ellis did the thing called rational emotive therapy, and that became cognitive behavioral therapy. And if you want to go and quit an addiction, for, let's say, for drinking, well, you do two things. One, you stop drinking, but also you get it in your head that drinking isn't good for you. It's negative. It's not going to go and save you or be a panacea. It's going to make things worse. So the cognitive and the behavioral. But Ellis, who was a agnostic Jewish guy, all of his life, towards the end, he started to believe in God. And he started to say that people that believe in God, people that have a faith, just seem to be happier and wholesome and all this other stuff. I mean, it's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. So that was Ellis. And Ellis was the biggest critic of organized religion for whatever reason. I mean, I think a lot of us take it personal, like if our baby brother died, maybe we're blaming God for that. And the reality is that bad things happen to good people, but also, just a little side note, bad things happen to bad people too. So it's,
right.
It's probably, there's justice for all. So, karma works. So anyway, man. And I don't mean to babble about religion, but I mean, I really like to talk about religion because, I mean, it's at our core. It's what we were taught by our parents. And then you take some of that or all of that as you go into life, and you validate it or negate it, or you add to it or whatever, so.
What I think is interesting is when I started getting into the podcast and things like that, centering on paranormal, Bigfoot, things like that, the amount of podcasters and people in this field that are religious.
Oh yeah.
The way Hollywood makes it sound, you can't believe in both. But if my personal belief, and I think a lot of people's personal beliefs, the Bible is full of the paranormal. Whether it's
burning bush, the parting of the sea, Ezekiel's wheel,
right.
On and on.
There's so many references that apply to what people are seeing today. So for the people to say you can't believe in the paranormal and be Christian, that is absolutely false.
Yeah. There's some Protestant minister up in New York State. He's not too far from me. He wrote a book about how he said it was the flying saucer that went over the Red Sea and parted the Red Sea. So that was his theory. But, I mean, there's a lot of, and look at ancient aliens, that the Nephilim came down and interbred with humans. And that's what, all that. I mean, that ancient alien Eric von Däniken stuff that really came from H.P. Lovecraft. H.P. Lovecraft was the one that wrote about that first. And, but the Bible is, there's everything in there, every phase of life, so yeah, phase, every emotion.
Where do you fall on Bigfoot possibly being Nephilim related.
Yeah, well, Lost Tribes of Bigfoot is sort of a metaphor for all the things that Bigfoot could be, whether it's Nephilim, Gigantopithecus, Australopithecus, Neanderthal, or I don't use the word missing link, but if there may be something out there that could be called. The Lost Tribes of Bigfoot was a metaphor for all of these entities that could possibly be Bigfoot, theories. Nephilim, of course, is one that's been around. Gigantopithecus, that came from Asia up along the Bering Strait to Canada and the Pacific Northwest. Neanderthal, part of our lineage, Australopithecus or Lucy, just a whole bunch of them. And there's people that believe, reputable researchers that believe in that Gigantopithecus or Neanderthal is, the possible missing link. What's interesting, I think, when you study some of this, there's no such thing as a missing link. There is an SCA, that's a single common ancestor, and man and apes came from that single common ancestor years ago. Apes evolved successfully and climbed the trees. Man came later, climbed the trees, and came down as Homo erectus, Neanderthal, and Homo sapiens. And they interbred. There's as much as 30% of us in the population that have maybe 4% Neanderthal DNA. And, we know this with our, 23andMe and all these other things that are out there. But the other thing, too, that's really of interest is that man shares 98% of our DNA with bonobos, chimpanzees, and gorillas. 98%. So that leaves 2%, John, that you and I have that the apes don't have. Now, that 2% that may represent, more cognitive skills or maybe more psychic skills, more spiritual of a connection. I think those are the things. But we know that Neanderthal had family structures. They had funerals. A lot of these had language and they used tools and all that. So, but 2% is what separates us from the apes that are the closest to us. And I think that's pretty amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. But I also read that we're very similar to bananas too. So
yeah, we're bananas. Yeah. Yeah. Well,
that could be a whole nother podcast in itself. But
yeah.
And you do have a book, Flying Saucer Esoteric.
Yeah. That was my microdose experience. You hear about these people that microdose and they do hallucinogens or modafinil or psilocybin or whatever. They'll do something and then to get creative. And what I did was, I wasn't using drugs. I was using green tea and valerian root and some other things. But what I did was I wanted to write a book in 100 days. So this was 2003. Coal-Region Hoodoo came out after years and years of research. So that was really a good book. And I highly recommend Coal-Region Hoodoo, Paranormal Tales from Inside the Pit. It's great. But anyway, I wanted to write another book that same year. So I did it. It was all an ego trip. Could I get 2 books published in the same year? So that was my impetus. But the other thing was, could I do it in 100 days? And here's the thing. I was writing morning, noon, and night. My wife never saw me. I thought that after 100 days, if I'm reaching burnout, I'll just pull out of it and stop. So 100 days was, the limit. I finished it in 97 days. And in Coal-Region Hoodoo, I have, let me just show you. I don't know if you can see that in Roman numerals, that's 97.
Yeah.
So there it is. And that's just cryptic.
Easter egg right in there.
Yeah, but I tell everybody. So, but I did it. And, but I immersed myself in the saucers. I read everything I could. I talked to as many people, and I have a whole lot of friends that are just into that. I mean, that's all I thought about, who, why, when, and where. And the book, Flying Saucer Esoteric, is an encyclopedia, the history of ufology from the days before Christ, when people saw things in the sky. When to say that there was life on other planets, you could be viewed as a heretic. Like Galileo, he was placed on house arrest. Copernicus, if he would have been around, he said that the earth went around the sun. Well, because we were made in God's image, everything came around the earth. That's what the church and state believed. That wasn't true. Copernicus proved that we went around the sun. It's a good thing that he died before they got to him, because they probably would have burned him at the stake, like they burned Bruno. Bruno was considered to be someone who went against the church and the state, and because of his convictions, he was put to death. So, but anyway, Flying Saucer Esoteric looks at all of that. And what's interesting is that if you were to open up the book to 1947 and look at Roswell, what's interesting is that there's a ton of stuff that came before Roswell and a ton of stuff that came after Roswell. Roswell's not the beginning nor the end, but Roswell. And it's interesting too, but I mean, Roswell is almost like a fairy tale, because it happened in 1947, and then in 1980, Charles Berlitz and William Moore wrote their book, the Roswell Incident. 33 years later, 33 years of secondhand information and blurred memories and all that, but. We started to have people that say that, yep, we saw the bodies, and yeah, we saw the craft. And you had people like Bob Lazar say, yeah, I was involved in retro engineering these things. And the thing of interest is when we started to have the congressional hearings in July of 2023, where David Grush said he knows where the bodies are and he knows where the vehicles are. And then November of 2024, Luis Elizondo said the same thing. I know the government knows something. Well, nothing's happened. It's just a tease. It's a song and dance. It's talking the talk. It's not walking the talk. And Grush said that he would go and reveal his sources and show them where everything is under the right circumstances. And that never happened. Now, what I did as a Floridian, I became a Florida resident 2 years ago. I wrote letters to 7 people who were involved in the congressional UFO thing. Florida Senator at the time, Marco Rubio, he was the vice chair of the Select Committee on Intelligence. Representative Anna Paulina Luna, Tim Burkett of Tennessee, who claimed that the government knows that there's a flying saucer out there, there's a cover-up. Senator Chuck Schumer, co-sponsor of the Unidentified Anomalous Phenomenal Disclosure Act, and then Senator Kristen Gillibrand, organizer of the All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office. That's why our heads are spinning, because there's all these groups, the Anomaly Resolution Office, the Unidentified Anomalous Phenomenal Disclosure Act, on and on and on. Our head is spinning because that's the way they want it to be. But anyway, long story short, I sent 6 letters out. I got 1 reply, and that was Marco Rubio. So my correspondence was this: can't you encourage or force Grush to show his cards? Tell us what he knows. Where's the bodies? Where the saucers? At that point, Marco sent me a letter back, and we were getting a nice correspondence going, and then Marco got tabbed for Secretary of State. So he's out of the UFO business, and I'm looking for a contact. So, I think I'm going to do it again, but I'm going to keep on writing cards and letters to the politicians just to see, what I could come up with. And maybe through the Freedom of Information Act, maybe there's things out there that we haven't been privy to. I don't know. But so far, those UFO congressional hearings have not shown anything. They haven't demonstrated anything. And don't tell me about transparency, because there is none.
Yeah. There's never been transparency in the government. I mean, that's like an oxymoron.
Yeah, and I get it makes me angry. I mean, I get really angry about this because we're all talking the same thing. We're not getting, we haven't moved much. The needle hasn't moved, so so I don't know. I don't know what the reality is, but we talk about Roswell and we talk about Area 51 and we talk about reverse engineering, but again, nobody's come up with anything. And Bob Lazar, a lot of stuff about him just didn't add up, like whether or not he actually was educated at MIT and if he was actually working for a specific government entity and all this. I mean, these guys, these whistleblowers talk a good talk. They know the lingo, they know the language, they know the technical terms. And I don't, but they do. And they sound, Grush sounds convincing. He sounds so convincing. So, I don't know. I wish there would be more. I wish the government would be a little bit more forthcoming. I wish they would just bring a conclusion to these congressional hearings, and we haven't had that yet.
Yeah, and you live at least part-time in Pennsylvania, and that's a kind of a UFO hotspot right now. I mean, over the last 20 years, you can go back to Kecksburg.
Yeah, Kecksburg, yeah. December 9th, 1965, yeah. And, so it's either flying saucer or it's a crashed American satellite or a crashed Soviet satellite, or it's a Glock Bell from 1930s Germany that they sent over here through time travel, and that's the latest incarnation. Kecksburg is starting to get that mythology like Roswell. It could have been a crashed Soviet. They think it was a probe to Venus that came down and crashed there. And so, back then, well, as now, all of these countries are trying to get a military advantage. And, whatever was there, as the story goes, in Kecksburg, Pennsylvania, it came down in December. People went out there. The army came in with the trucks. They carted something, an acorn-shaped object out, covered with tarps. And then supposedly they took it to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. The difference between Kecksburg and Roswell is that immediately there were witnesses, people that saw things, and they were able to go through the Freedom of Information Act immediately and try to get things. But here's the rub, as Shakespeare would say. A lot of the stuff they got from FIA was either redacted or lost. And they admitted, hey, we lost it, and this was all about the Kecksburg, crash. So, so we don't know, but it's so easy to blame the government and the deep state for withholding information on us. And I think people are really upset, and because we can't get the truth, I think it chases away from science and we go to pseudoscience. We go to the conspiracy theories. And so with the conspiracy theories, both you and I could add to that story, that narrative, add our own little spice to it. And it's too bad, because we live in a day and age where there's just too many conspiracy theories, and the truth is being muddled and clouded and, and muddied and everything else. I mean, who knows what the truth is anymore? We talked about President John Kennedy. Not too long ago, QAnon people showed up in Dallas, Texas, waiting for John Kennedy, the former president, and his son, John Kennedy Jr., to manifest, to show up. They waited for that. And that was from a podcaster that told them it was going to happen. Again, another messiah, another false prophet. Amazing what people buy into.
I really think that the government loves conspiracy theories because it just gets everybody fighting. And then they're like, oh, it doesn't matter which side we play on. We're not giving them any information anyway, but they're too busy fighting with each other to worry about what we're actually doing.
Yeah. You put all your energy into that when it should be over here. That's
Yeah.
what it is. Yeah, we're all knocking on the wrong doors. That's what it is.
I agree. I agree. Well, Max, we've been doing this for 53 minutes almost.
Okay, wow.
Yeah, time flies.
Yeah, that. Well, we talked about religion a lot, so
Yeah.
that was good. Well, God bless you, brother. That was.
Well, why don't you go ahead and tell everybody where they can find you?
Yeah. So I have a website. It's www.maximfurek.com. And if you're interested in purchasing an autographed copy of any of my books, Lost Tribes of Bigfoot, Flying Saucer Esoteric, Co-Region Hoodoo, or the Shepton Mythology, just contact me and I'll give you a nice price and I'll autograph it, all that. The other way is you could go to Amazon and you could go and check out my books on Amazon. It's Maxim Furek, and you could get them on Amazon as well. I tell people, to support local bookstores, libraries, and authors. I mean, we're the ones in the trenches. We're the ones trying to go and, I don't know, make a living, survive, whatever it is that we do. And again, this isn't a complaint. And I'm not crying on your shoulder. I'm just saying that we should support local folks, because if not, they're going to go away like the malls. And, unless you want Amazon to take over the whole world, think about supporting local authors and bookstores. So anyway, but it's your choice. But maximfurek.com. I'm a paranormal author, and, and if you contact me on my website, I'd be glad to go and chat with you about, your feelings about the paranormal and Bigfoot. So
that's awesome. Yeah. And I will put those links in the description. So to the books and to your website. And Max, I really do appreciate you coming on tonight. And if you have a paranormal encounter you'd like to share, you can email me at mythsandmullets@gmail.com. Until next time, I'll talk to you later. Gotta go.
Shadow in the pines lurking in the dusky air. Bigfoot stomps through the woods like he don't care. Lights in the sky flash green then blue. Aliens descending with a secret or two. Whispers in the breeze, cold fingers down your spine. Ghosts in the graveyard, twisting through time. Eyes wide open in the dead of night. The myths and monsters giving one hell of a fright. Oh, Myths, Monsters, and Mullets podcast, spinning wild tales of a future and a past. Hosted by John Methenkamp's fiery soul. He takes us where the wild unknown flows. Oh, Myths, Monsters, and Mullets podcast, spinning wild tales of a future and a past. Hosted by John Methenkamp's fiery soul. He takes us where the wild unknown flows. Down by the bayou, you hear a raspy growl. Swamp gas glowing as the coyotes howl. A UFO zipping just above the trees, grabbing hold of wonder like a southern summer breeze. Some call it crazy, others call it a lie. But listen real close as the truth passes by. The lines are blurry, the story's bold. raspy growl. Swamp gas glowing as the coyotes howl. A UFO zipping just above